Welcome back to This is Thailand. Tonight's story comes from a man most of you would look at and think, that one's fine. That one knows what he's doing. His name is Gunnar Lindqvist, 54 years old, from Luleå, up in the far north of Sweden, though he spent 26 years of his working life on oil rigs in the North Sea. Big man, quiet man, the kind who answers a question with a sound instead of a word. Gunnar came to Pattaya with money in the bank, a spreadsheet on his laptop, and a very firm belief that he was not the sort of foreigner who gets into trouble here. He'd watched other men get into trouble. He'd made notes. There's a thing that happens in Pattaya that nobody talks about openly. There's a hierarchy. Certain men get noticed, and it's almost never the ones who think they're being noticed. Gunnar found out where he sat on that list about 3 years too late. This one's going to stick with you. Here's his story, in his own words. I should say first that I am not a talker. My sister tells me this like it is news. So if this comes out strange, that is why. On the rigs you talk when something is wrong. Otherwise you don't. 26 years I did the North Sea. Started as roustabout at 28, ended as assistant driller. Out of Stavanger mostly. 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And if you have never lived like that, I will tell you what it does to a man. It makes your life into blocks. You are here, then you are there. You are working, then you are not. There is no in-between where you have to decide anything. Some men can't handle it. They drink through the 3 weeks off and come back gray. I liked it. I liked it more than I should have. The helicopter out of Sola in February. That noise, you feel it in your teeth. Cold on the deck that goes through everything you own. And the food was very good, actually. People don't believe this, but the food offshore was excellent. Anyway, what that work gives you is two things. You become competent or you get hurt. And you learn not to say anything about how you feel because nobody out there wants to hear it and the weather doesn't care. Those two things, competence and silence. For 26 years, I thought they were the same as being a good man. I met Ingrid in 1997. She was a nurse at Sunderby, outside Luleå. We married in 99. And I will be honest with you now because there is no point being anything else at my age. Our marriage worked because I was gone half the time. That is not a criticism of her. She had her own life, her friends, her sister, her whole world. And then I would come home for 3 weeks and we would be very glad to see each other. And then I would leave again before either of us got tired of it. Some marriages are built like that. It's not a bad way. It's just a way. We didn't have children. That was a decision. Then it was a thing we stopped discussing. Then it was too late. I don't know at what point it changed from one to the other. She was diagnosed in 2013. Multiple sclerosis, the progressive kind, the kind that doesn't give you the good years in between. She was 48. I took onshore work first. Maintenance planning, a desk, about 60% of what I earned before. Then I took nothing, because she needed somebody in the house. I am not going to make a big speech about those 7 years. I'll tell you what it actually was, because people who haven't done it think it's sad and it isn't sad. It's logistics. It's a transfer board and knowing how to get it under her without hurting her hip. It's a catheter bag, and knowing the smell means an infection before the fever comes. It's crushing tablets. It's 3 hours on the phone with the common arguing about care hours, and them saying they will review it and reviewing it and giving you 4 hours a week when you asked for 14. It's a lot of small things done correctly over and over for years, and I was good at it. This is the part one have trouble saying without sounding like I'm asking for something. I was very good at it. Better than the home care people, some of them. I had a system for the mornings. I knew her medication timings better than the neurologist did. And I mean that literally. I corrected him twice. The rigs had trained me for exactly one thing, and it turned out that thing was this. She died in the autumn of 2020. She died on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because the physio was booked for Thursday, and I had to call and cancel her. And I remember thinking, well, that's one thing off the list. That's a terrible thing to have thought. I've never told anyone that before. I slept for 4 days after the funeral. Not sadness. I want to be clear. I hadn't slept more than 5 hours in a row since about 2016, and my body simply took what it was owed. My sister Marit came down from Umeå and stayed, and I slept, and she made food and I ate it. Then she went home and I got up on the Monday at 5 o'clock in the morning, which was the medication time, and there was nothing to do. That's the part nobody warns you about. I thought the tiredness would lift. It didn't lift. It just stopped pointing at anything. 7 years of being needed every hour, every single hour, and then the hours are still there, and they're empty, and they keep coming. 8 months I stayed in that house. Norrbotten winter, so it's dark by 2 in the afternoon, and it stays dark. I would drive to the ICA and buy things and drive home. I fixed the guttering, I fixed it again. Marit called every Sunday at 4 and asked how I was, and I said fine. And she said good. And we both knew that was rubbish, but neither of us was going to be the one to say so. We're not that family. There was a man I worked with on the rigs, Ove, from Sundsvall. He'd retired to Thailand years back, a place called Yom Tien, and he put photographs on Facebook constantly. Him at a table, him with a beer, sunshine. I didn't think much about them for years, and then one February afternoon, at about 2:30 in the dark, I found myself looking at all of them in order. I told myself it was arithmetic. I want you to understand that I genuinely believed this at the time. The house in Lulu was too big for one man and worth more than it would ever be worth again. Ingrid's parents' summer cabin at Storforsen had sat empty for 3 years, sold together, after the tax, about 2.1 million kroner. Call it $200,000. I built a spreadsheet. Rent, food, health insurance, visa costs, contingency. I worked out my monthly burn in Thailand would be roughly a third of what it was in Sweden, and my occupational pension doesn't pay out for another 11 years. So on paper, the move was simply correct. That's what I told Merritt. That's what I told myself. The truth is a bit shorter than that. I was 51 years old, and I had spent 7 years being the most necessary person in someone's life. And then I wasn't necessary to anybody at all, and I got on a plane to find out if I could be again. I landed at Suvarnabhumi in October, and the heat hit me on the air bridge before I was even properly off the aircraft. That's the thing nobody prepares a northern man for. It isn't hot like a sauna, because a sauna is dry and you can leave. This was like walking into someone's breath. My shirt was through by the time I found the taxi rank. Ovi met me in Yomtien, 69 then, brown as a saddle, in shorts and one of those shirts with the small collar, and he hugged me, which we had never done in 20 years of working together. He'd been out here 11 years. Third Thai girlfriend, a lovely woman called Pui, who did not appear to like him very much. Motorbike he shouldn't have been riding at his age. Money situation that I did not ask about, but could work out from the fact that he lived above a laundry on Soy Chayaprug and had stopped going home for Christmas. He gave me advice from the moment I put my bag down. Constant advice. Where to eat, which bus goes where, which immigration officer at Yomtien is the difficult one. Some of it was useful. Most of it was a man who has made a lot of mistakes explaining the mistakes as though they were strategy. I took a studio on a 6-month lease off Pattaya, 14,000 a month, about 4,000 kroner, which for a Swede is nothing. And I remember thinking that was the whole point. That was the arithmetic working. The first weeks were good. I'll say that plainly because a lot of these stories skip it, and it isn't honest to skip it. I woke at 5 for the first month because that was Ingrid's morning medication time, and my body did not know the schedule had ended. But now when I woke at 5, there was nothing wrong. That's a strange feeling. I would put on shorts and walk down to Jomtien Beach Road while it was still gray and there'd be monks out. The orange ones standing very still while a woman with a rice pot spooned food into the bowl and then knelt down on the pavement beside a scooter with her hands together. Roosters somewhere. Always roosters. In the middle of a city, I never understood where they lived. And the noise. Motorbikes constantly from 4 in the morning, and somebody sweeping a forecourt with one of those stiff brooms, and a truck with a loudspeaker on the roof, shouting about something I couldn't understand for years. I ate at the same place on Soy 5 most mornings. Cow Pad Guy, 40 baht. The woman there called me Papa. I liked that more than I should admit. The main thing was this. For 7 years I had slept listening. You do this if you care for someone. Part of you never goes under. Part of you is upstairs at the door, waiting for a sound. And here there was no sound to listen for. It took about 3 weeks before my body believed it. I thought that meant I was getting better. I think now it just meant I was empty and warm instead of empty and cold. Now, the part where one explained how clever I was. I went and looked at the bars, obviously. You don't come to Pattaya and pretend that isn't there. Ove took me up Soy Buakau on the second week All the beer bars with the girls out front at the rail, the music from four places at once, Chang signs, some Englishman with his shirt off and a face like a boiled ham. And I did not enjoy it. I want to be careful here, because I'm not going to pretend I'm above anything. I just found the transaction embarrassing. Not immoral. Embarrassing. A girl of about 24 sat with me and asked where I come from and how long I stay, in exactly the order and with exactly the tone that the girl before her had used. And I bought her a drink and gave her 300 baht and left. I went twice. That was enough. And then I did the stupidest thing a man can do in that town, which is decide that because I don't like the bars are the only danger. I made a whole system out of it. This is the rig brain, you understand. 26 years of hazard assessment. I sat with a beer at a place on Soy Metro, and I watched the men and I categorized them like equipment failures. The drinkers, the ones with the gold chains, the ones already on their fourth girlfriend and their last 100,000. I told myself, I don't drink much, I don't gamble, I keep a spreadsheet with the motorbike taxi fares in it, 20 baht a ride, itemized. I said to Ove one evening, these men have no discipline. And Ove looked at me and said, you're the good kind. They'll fight over you. I thought he was being kind about my character. He wasn't. He was telling me exactly what I was, in market terms, and I heard a compliment. The laundry. I have to explain the laundry because it sounds like nothing. I have never in my life ironed a shirt. Ingrid did it, then when Ingrid could not do it, a woman from the care service did it, and I can rig a top drive, but I cannot iron a shirt. There was a laundry and ironing shop about 80 meters from my building on the SOI. 20 baht a kilo, 40 for shirts pressed, concrete floor, 2 industrial machines, a fan that turned, a little spirit house outside with a red Fanta and marigolds in front of it. That smell of hot cotton and cheap soap powder that I associate now with the worst decisions of my life. The woman at the counter was called Knock. Everyone is called Knock or Nan or Fawn out here. It's a nickname. Her actual name was Wan Pen. 38, small, not glamorous, hair up with a pen through it, glasses she took off when she talked to you. From Roy Et, up in Isan, divorced. The first 3 or 4 times I only handed over a bag. Then one day she gave me my receipt and I said, and she stopped and laughed at me. Not unkindly, she said, you always say, is this yes or no? And I said, and she laughed properly then, holding the receipt book against her front. So I started bringing shirts. I would like to state for the record that at least half of those shirts were clean. I would wear one for 4 hours and put it in the bag. 54 years old and I am contaminating my own laundry, so I have a reason to walk 80 meters down a SOI. That is the actual behavior of the careful, disciplined man with the spreadsheet. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of this before anything at all happened between us. I would stand at the counter and we would talk in her broken English and my worst Thai while the fan turned, and she taught me the word for iron and I taught her the word for herring, which is a stupid word to teach anybody, and twice I tried to buy her a coffee and twice she said no. Politely. Both times she said something like, I work, and looked at the machines. She refused money from me for 6 weeks. If you remember one thing from all of this, remember that. Not because it was a trick. I don't think it was a trick, even now. But that refusal was the single most important event in the entire story. And it would be about 3 years before I understood why. What finally happened was that her scooter wouldn't start. 7 in the evening, I'm walking back with a bag of shirts, and she's out on the SOY with the seat up, kicking it, and there's a proper rain coming. The kind where the drains start smelling before the water arrives, so I looked at it. It's a Honda Wave, they're all Honda Waves, and the connector on the ignition coil had corroded green because everything in that country corrodes. Took me 11 minutes. I have done bigger repairs in worse weather with a man screaming at me about mud pumps. She stood under the shop awning and watched me and did not say anything the entire time. And when it started, she laughed at the noise it made, and then she said, okay, now you can buy the coffee. That's it. That's the whole beginning of it. A dirty connector. So, months 2 through about 8, and I'll try to tell this in order because it matters how slow it was. We did not become anything quickly. She closed the shop at 7:30 and we would go and eat, and it was always her choosing, always some plastic stool place I would never have found, and always cheap. Some tam with the little field crabs in it that I could not eat at first and now cannot do without. Moo ping off a cart, 10 baht a stick, the smell of that when they fan the coals. If you have been to Thailand, you know exactly the smell I mean, and if you haven't, I cannot explain it to you. She rode. I never once drove her anywhere. She drove me, this small woman with a big Swede on the back with his knees out like a grasshopper. Down to Pattaya at 9 at night, warm air, power lines overhead all knotted up like something dropped from a boat, past the spirit houses with the red Fanta and the marigolds going brown. I started learning some Thai. Not much, maybe 200 words in the end, and my tones were terrible. And she corrected me by repeating the words slowly with a completely straight face until I got it. I taught her Swedish words. Sill, which is herring. Why did I teach a woman from Royat the word for herring? I don't know. It made her laugh, that's why. Now her situation. Here's the thing I want you to notice, because it's the whole mechanism. She never told me any of it. I had to dig it out over about 10 weeks in pieces, and every piece came out sideways. The son Beam, 9 years old, living with her mother up in Royat. I found that out because a photo fell out of her purse, and she put it away quickly and looked embarrassed. The ex-husband, who was in Rayong somewhere, and had contributed nothing in 6 years. That came from a friend of hers at the shop, not from her. What she earned, 12,000 baht a month. Call it 3,400 kroner, for 6 days a week standing over a steam press in 40-degree heat. I only learned that because I asked her outright and she went quiet and then told me the truth like it was something to apologize for. Do you understand what that does to a man like me? I had spent 2 months in a town where every woman I'd met asked me inside 4 minutes how long I was staying, and here was one I had to interrogate to find out she was poor. I want to be fair to her here. I don't think that was technique. I think she was genuinely ashamed. Isan people carry that. There's a whole class thing in Thailand that Farangs don't see. Bangkok looks down on Isan the way Stockholm looks down on Norrbotten, except worse and with money attached. But whether it was technique or not, the effect was identical. And that's a thing I have thought about a great deal since. It doesn't actually matter what's in someone's heart if the machinery works the same either way. I had a list, an actual mental list, from Ove and from the bar crowd and from those forums where bitter men type at each other all night. Asks for money early, sick buffalo, gold, talks about her family in the first week, phone always going, wants a motorbike, has another Farang paying the rent. She failed to display a single item on that list, not one, and I ticked them off silently, like a pre-start check, and every week she passed I got more certain. The money started in month 5. I raised it, not her. I want that on the record. We had been together properly for a couple of months, and she came to eat one night gray in the face because the shop had been over 40 degrees inside all day, and I said, "Why don't you stop working there?" She said no. Twice more over about 3 weeks, she said no. Once she got actually annoyed with me, which she almost never did, said something like, "I am not a girl from the bar, I work." And I kept pushing, because I am a helpful man and I had found something to be helpful about. We settled on 25,000 baht a month, around 7,000 kroner. She kept the shop job anyway for another 5 months, part-time, which one took as further evidence of her character. Let me show you the arithmetic I did, because this is the part that expat men will recognize and go quiet at. 25,000 a month is 300,000 a year, about 85,000 kroner, against 2.1 million in the account. That's 4%. 4% for a woman who is worth more to my life than anything else in it. My rent was 14,000. My food was maybe 6. I was living on less than half what I'd budgeted. Any accountant on earth would sign that off. And the true reason, which I did not see for about 3 years, it was a standing obligation. Every month on the same date, an amount going out to someone who needed it. A rotation. My entire adult life has been rotations. 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, medication at 5 and 11 and 6, catheter change Tuesday and Friday. 7 years of the most necessary work I have ever done, and then 8 months of nothing at all in a dark house in Lulu. I didn't buy a girlfriend. I bought back a schedule. The other thing from that period, and I'll leave it here because it's the seed of everything. She was particular about when I could reach her. Not secretive, particular. There were stretches, usually 2 or 3 days, where she'd say she was busy with family things, and messages online would come back hours later. Always polite, always with the little sticker of the rabbit she liked. I thought it was respect for her mother's house. Old woman, small village, a Farang boyfriend is not something you announce. I even admired it. I remember standing on my balcony one evening with a Leo. I wasn't drinking, looking down at the traffic on Pattaya, thinking, this is a woman with boundaries. That was the actual word I used in my head. Boundaries. The call came in month 8. I was eating breakfast. Cow Pad Guy, the same place on Soy 5, the woman who calls me Papa. And knock rang and she was crying, which she did not do, and I could not understand about half of what she said. Her mother's foot. May Samjai, 66. Diabetic for 11 years and not managing it because managing it cost money. She had stepped on something in the yard, or a rat had bitten her while she slept. The story changed depending on who told it, and the wound had been open for 3 weeks and had gone black at the edges. We drove up that night, 9 hours in a minivan from Ekamai with the aircon set to Arctic and a Thai pop ballad on repeat and a monk asleep across the aisle. Roy at hospital first. Then they referred her on to a private place in Udon Thani because the vascular surgeon there was the one who could actually save the foot, and the government waiting list was 11 weeks, and she did not have 11 weeks. Now here's the thing about me in hospitals. I have spent 7 years in hospital corridors. Sunderby, Umeå, the rehab place at PTO. I know what a good ward looks like and what a bad one looks like, and I can tell inside 90 seconds which is which. And I want to tell you plainly, because a lot of men in my situation get told a hospital story and hand over money and never once walk through the door. I saw all of it with my own eyes. I read the chart or the parts of it in numbers, which is a universal language. I saw the wound debrided. I saw the HbA1c figure, and I knew what it meant because I had sat through enough consultations in my life. None of this was invented. That matters to me still. What it cost, surgery and the vascular consult, the 8 days inpatient, the antibiotics, the follow-up dressings twice a week for 2 months after, and the transport back and forth because the family had no car. 180,000 baht, around 54,000 kroner. Call it 5,000 euro. I paid it at the cashier window on the ground floor with my Capricorn card, and I did not hesitate for 1 second. And I want to be honest with you about what I felt while I was doing it, because it was not what you think. It was not obligation. It was not love even. It was joy. I was standing in a hospital again, and I was the person who knew what to do. I asked the nurse about the dressing schedule, and she looked at me differently when she realized I understood the answer. I bought the plastic sheet for the bed because the family didn't know they needed one. I showed the sister how to check the other foot every morning, the pulse on the top, press the toenail and count. 2 seconds is fine. 4 seconds is not fine. 3 years I had been useless. 3 years of walking on a beach and eating fried rice and updating a spreadsheet. And in 1 week in a hot little hospital in Udon Thani, I was necessary again. That was the moment I was lost. Not when I met her, not when I started the money. There at that cashier window feeling good about myself. And notice, this had almost nothing to do with Knock, the family then. Because after the hospital, we went to the village, 20-odd kilometers outside Royet town. And I met all of them properly for the first time. Wooden house up on posts, tin roof, concrete washing area underneath where the dogs slept. Rice fields flat to the horizon in every direction. That particular Isayan green that hurts your eyes. Somebody's speaker playing Morlem music from 4 houses away. All day, every day. A rooster under the house that started at 3:40 in the morning. Dust on everything. Her brother Sutichai, mid-30s. Pleasant enough, never worked at anything for longer than 5 months. Drank Hong Thong with soda from about 4 in the afternoon. Her sister, Ploy, 26 then, sharp face, sharp eyes, worked in a phone shop in town, spoke better English than any of them and used it carefully. And Beam, the boy, 9 years old. He weighed me from about 3 meters away and would not come closer for 2 days. I am 194 centimeters tall with white eyebrows. To a 9-year-old in a village in Royette, I must have looked like something that came out of the sea. They gave me the good chair, the one plastic chair with arms, everybody else on the floor mats. They put a fan pointed at me alone. Ploy's little daughter was sent to buy me a beer I did not ask for, and I could not refuse it without insulting somebody. I understood dimly that I had changed something in that house just by sitting in it. The neighbors came to look. A Farang son-in-law is a status object in a village like that. And I don't say that bitterly, it is simply a fact about how the world works there. The same as a new pickup or a son who becomes a monk. And here is where I got the biggest thing wrong of my whole life. I learned about the obligation, the eldest daughter thing. Nok had been sending money home since she was 19. She went to Bangkok at 19 and worked in a plastics factory in Samut Prakan and sent money home, and then a laundry, and then Pattaya and a laundry, and every single month for 19 years she has sent money to that house. Long before me. That is not a scam. That is just what the eldest daughter does in Isan, and if she stopped, her own mother would not eat properly and the whole village would know it, and the shame of that is worse than the hunger. So I sat in that plastic chair and I thought, this is real. The obligation is real. The poverty is real. The illness is real. The 19 years are real. Therefore, all of it is real. That's the error. Right there. That's the entire error, and it took me 3 years and a bowl of noodles to see it, because a thing can be completely true and still not be the whole of the truth. I have seen men on a rig do everything right on the checklist and still lose a hand, because the checklist was for a different hazard. The support went up to 35,000 a month after that, around 10,000 kroner. She didn't ask. I said it in the minivan on the way back to Bangkok, somewhere past Nakhon Ratchasima at 2 in the morning, and she said no, and I said, and that was that. The other thing from that period, I stopped updating the spreadsheet in month 11. I know exactly when, because I found it later on the laptop. Column runs down neat as anything. Rent, food, insurance, visa, motorbike taxi 20 baht, 20 baht, 40 baht, and then it just stops. September. Nothing after. That file is the single most damning thing I own. Not because of what's in it, because of where it ends. Nobody ever asked me to build a house. I want to be very precise about that, because it's the cleverest thing in this whole story, and I'm still not certain anybody was being clever. May Samjai came home from Udon Thani in a wheelchair with a foot she still had and a dressing that needed changing twice a week. And the house was a wooden house on posts, which means everything happens up a flight of open steps with no rail, and underneath is bare concrete where the dogs sleep and the water sits after rain. I had spent 7 years thinking about exactly this. Transfer boards, thresholds, turning circles, where the wet room drains. I once measured a doorway in Luleå 4 times before I accepted that a wheelchair would not go through it, and then I took the frame out myself with a reciprocating saw. So I stood at the bottom of those steps in the heat with a cement dust smell coming off the yard, and I did the survey in my head without being asked. Nobody said a word to me. Ploy mentioned once, in passing, that the floor in the back room had gone soft where the rain came in. That's all. That is genuinely all that was ever said. 2 weeks later, I was the one who brought it up. In the pickup on the way back from the clinic, I said, "We should build a proper house." She said no. Of course, she said no. That's how it works. That's Kringjai. You do not accept a large thing the first time it is offered, because that would be shameful. She said no, and her mother later said no. And I had to say it 3 or 4 times over about 6 weeks before the discussion quietly turned into a discussion about where. I have thought about this more than anything else in the entire business. Did they steer me into it? Some of it, probably. Ploy mentioning the soft floor, that was not an accident. But did Knox sit down and plan it? I don't think so. I think she wanted a house for her mother the way anybody would, and she knew what I was, and she simply didn't stop me. That's not a scam. That's just letting a river go where it's already going. Now the money, and I'm going to give you the real numbers because this is the part that matters to anyone watching. 1,400,000 baht, around 420,000 kroner, 40,000 euro, near enough. 3 bedrooms, concrete block and render, tile floors, tin roof with proper insulation because I insisted, a wet room on the ground floor, built wide with a fall to the drain and no lip at the door. A ramp. A rail down the side of the ramp that I welded myself in a workshop in Royet town with a borrowed inverter set. And I will tell you honestly that those 2 days were among the happiest of my adult life. 14 months it took. Ran 22% over, which anybody in construction anywhere on this earth will tell you is entirely normal and which I still budgeted for badly. And the land it stands on is in Sutichai's name, her brother. Because a foreigner cannot own land in Thailand, and I had read that much, I had done my reading. I knew about the 30-year lease. I knew the word usufruct. I had it in a browser tab. I did none of it. No lease. No usufruct registered at the land office. No lawyer. Nothing on paper anywhere with my name on it. 26 years offshore. I have refused to lift a joint of drill pipe because a permit had the wrong date on it. I have shut down a whole deck operation over a shackle that hadn't been certified in 14 months and had a Norwegian tool pusher screaming in my face about it, and I did not move because the paper wasn't right. And then I built a house on a handshake with an unemployed man who drinks Hong Thong from 4 in the afternoon. If you take nothing else from this, I don't want your sympathy. I want you to look at that. Then came the rest, and the rest came fast once the first thing was done. The pickup. A used Isuzu D-Max, 380,000 baht, about 114,000 kroner, for Sutichai to start a delivery business, moving rice and building materials around the province. There was a plan. There was even a little notebook with figures in it. That truck did about 11 paid jobs in 2 years and spent the rest of its life going to the temple, to the market, and to his friend's place in the next village. School fees for Ploy's 2 girls. Uniforms, books, the lot. Around 40,000 a year. Songkran, which if you don't know is the water festival in April. And what it actually means when you're the Farang is that the whole extended family gathers and everybody's expenses somehow arrive at your table. Twice that was somewhere north of 60,000 baht each time. A gold chain for her mother's wrist, 2 baht weight, merit at the temple, a generator, a new water pump. Her cousin's motorbike accident, and the sin-sod conversation, which began, as everything did, sideways, through an aunt, mentioning what a family of that standing would expect. 500,000 baht was the number that got left in the room. We never got as far as the Amphor. We never registered anything. Total additional on top of the house, something like 600,000 baht. Add it all up. House, hospital, truck, monthly support for nearly 3 years. Everything else, around 2.6 million baht, 780,000 kroner, a third of everything Ingrid and I ever had. The cracks. And they weren't cracks at first. They were nothing at all. She started spending 8 to 10 days a month in Royet, which made sense. Her mother, her son, the house going up. But it was the same weeks, always around the middle of the month. I noticed the pattern the way you notice a vibration in a machine you've worked on for years, which is to say I noticed it long before I let myself think about it. She had a phone I hadn't bought, newer than mine. She said her friend at the shop sold it to her cheap, and the truck was never dirty. That's a small thing, but it stayed with me. A truck that does 11 jobs in 2 years never has mud in the bed. Ove said something. This was on Soy Chayapruik outside his building, and we'd had 2 beers, and he said, "Do you know where she is right now?" I stood up and I paid for both beers, and I said goodnight, and I walked home. I did not speak to that man again for 2.5 years, which he'd been offshore with me. He came to Ingrid's funeral, and I cut him off in 11 seconds because he asked me a question I already knew the answer to. That is what I did with the warning I was given. And every time it got close to the surface, I would run the same argument in my head. And I want you to hear it because you'll recognize it. She never asked for the car. She never asked for gold first. She refused money for 6 weeks. She cried at that hospital, and I saw her cry, and nobody can fake that. Well, the house was finished in the March. Housewarming, monks in the morning, the whole village through the door, May Samjai sitting in her chair by the wet room she could actually use, and Ploy stood in the yard with her arms folded and didn't come inside. I noticed. I want that on the record too. I noticed everything all the way through. That's the thing that's hardest to say out loud. I am not a man who misses details. I have spent my working life spotting the wrong thing before it becomes the bad thing. I saw all of it and I filed it, and I did not open the file. What happened after the housewarming was that the money settled. House in Sutachai's name, truck in Sutachai's name. The remainder of what I'd put in sitting where Knock could reach it. And Ploy, who had 2 daughters whose school fees I was paying and no share of anything solid, got nothing. In that family, in that village, that's not a small thing. That's face. Everybody could see who had a concrete house now and who was still in a wooden one. So about 6 weeks later, when I was up there on my own, Knock had gone to Bangkok for 2 days about her ID card, she said. Ploy asked me to eat with her. Little noodle place on the road in Royat town. Plastic stools, a fan, a television bracketed up in the corner, playing a soap with the sound off, and that smell of stock and chili and drain that every one of those places has. I had Gai Tu Mu. Ploy had nothing, just a Coke with ice in a bag, and she smoked, which I'd never seen her do. She said it in English so there could be no misunderstanding. She'd worked in a phone shop for 6 years. Her English was fine. There is a German, Frankfurt, 60-something. He comes 2 times in the year, usually February and usually September, and he sends money every month, and he has been doing it since before you. I want to describe exactly what happened in my head, because I think it's the most useful thing in this entire story. Nothing arrived. That's the point. Nothing new arrived at all. Everything she said fitted into a hole that was already there and had been for 2.5 years. The 8 to 10 days in the middle of the month, I'd had that pattern in my head so long I could have drawn it. The phone I didn't buy. February and September. The 2 months she always seemed to have something on with her family. The 3 days where messages came back 4 hours late with the rabbit sticker. It was like being handed the last piece of a machine you've been staring at, and it goes in and it fits, and you understand that you knew the shape of the gap. You'd measured it. You just hadn't wanted to say what fits in there. I sat for a while. Ploy waited. Thai people are better at waiting than Swedes, and that is saying something. And the question I asked her was not the question a normal man asks. I've thought about that since. I didn't ask how much. I didn't ask his name. I asked, does she like him? And Ploy put her cigarette down and said, not like you. That was worse. I want you to understand that was so much worse than if she'd said yes, because it meant it was all true, both things at the same time, and there was no version of this where I got to be simply robbed. I drove back to the village and I sat in the pickup outside the house I built for about 40 minutes with the engine off and the heat coming up off the road and the Morlem going from 4 houses away, same as always, all day, every day. Then I went back to Pattaya and I waited 2 days for her to come back from Bangkok. 2 days. I did not phone. I did not write online. My sister would say that's the most Lindqvist thing I've ever done, and she'd be right. The confrontation, if you want to call it that. We were in the house. She'd come up the following week, and I'd driven up too, and we were in the front room, tile floor, that ceiling fan I'd fitted myself, and I said her name, her real name, Wan Pen, not Knock, which I had almost never used. And I said, tell me about Frankfurt. She did not deny it. Not for 1 second. She did not cry. She did not get angry. She did not blame me. She did not do any of the 6 things I had privately rehearsed in the car. She sat down opposite me and she was quiet for a moment, and then she explained it to me, calmly, like someone explaining a work rota. She said, you have money and you can go home anytime you want. You have a passport and a bank in Sweden and a sister. I have my son and my mother in this house, and I cannot go anywhere. If you get sick, or you get bored, or you die, she actually said that if you die, then what? And then she said the thing that I have not been able to put down since. She said she did not lie about loving me. And here's what you have to understand. And this is where a lot of men watching are going to disagree with me. And that's fine. She did not see a contradiction, not a flicker of one. In her arithmetic, those two things sat side by side quite comfortably. I love this man, and I cannot afford to depend on only this man. 19 years of being the eldest daughter, sending money home every single month since she was 19 years old, and never once in her life having anything that couldn't be taken away by somebody else's decision. I sat in a house I paid for, that I cannot own, that has another man's name on the land, and I realized that this woman had just been more honest with me in 90 seconds than anybody had been in 3 years, including me, especially me. I asked one more thing. I asked whether her mother knew. She said yes, so they all knew. Ploy knew, Sutachai knew, the old woman whose foot I saved knew, and every one of them had sat with me and been kind to me and given me the good share. And here's the ugly part, the part 1,000 not proud of. My first clear feeling, underneath everything, was not heartbreak. It was humiliation. Not that she'd had someone else, that I'd been the sort of man that this works on. 26 years offshore, shut down a whole deck over a shackle with the wrong paperwork, and I built a house on a handshake because it made me feel necessary. I didn't shout. I've never shouted at a woman in my life. I said, which she laughed at once, a very long time ago, outside a laundry on a soy in Yom Team. Then I got my bag and I went out past the ramp I'd welded and got in the pickup, which was not mine either, and drove. I drove to Pattaya without stopping, 7 hours. And I want to tell you what rock bottom actually looked like, because it is not what they show you. It was not dramatic. I did not sit in a 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning crying into a toasted sandwich. I went back to a studio off the Praia, and I closed the curtains, and I stayed there about 3 weeks. I ate. I slept badly. I did not drink, which surprised people who don't know me and surprised nobody who does. Merit rang from Umia, and I let it go. Twice. The bad part wasn't the money. The bad part was that one recognized the room. It was the same room as the 8 months in Lulu. Same ceiling, different ceiling fan. I had come 8,000 kilometers and spent 3 years and 780,000 kroner and arrived back in exactly the same place. Except this time I'd paid for the trip and I'd been made a fool of on the way. So, the ledger, since that's what people want, 2.6 million baht in total over 3 years, 780,000 kroner. Around $80,000 if you like it that way. A third of everything Ingrid and I had. I have 1.3 million kroner left. That is not nothing. I want to say that clearly because I am not standing here destitute and I don't want anybody's pity. I know men in that town living on 28,000 baht a month with a bad hip and no way home. I'm not one of them. I'm fine. The land, gone. Sutachai's name on it, no lease, no usufruct, nothing with my name anywhere. I spoke to a Thai lawyer in Pattaya about it one afternoon, mostly to punish myself. 2,000 baht for the consultation. He was very polite. He explained that I had made a gift. I did not pursue it, not because I'm noble, because there was a 66-year-old woman with one working foot living in that house. And any process I started would have ended with her out of it. The truck, gone. Also a gift, apparently. 3 years, gone, and that's the one that actually costs. Over. I went round to Soy Chaya Pruak about 2 months after. He was on the plastic chair outside his building. I said I should have listened. He said, He'd picked it up off me 20 years ago. And then he said, sit down, and that was the entire conversation about it. We're not that kind of men either. He died last year, heart. I was at the temple for it. And Marie, this is the one I can't fix. My sister believes I was robbed by a criminal. That's the story she has. That's the story she tells her husband. And every time I try to explain that it wasn't like that the old woman's foot was real, that the money went into concrete in a wet room and a ramp I welded myself, that Juan Pen told me the truth in the end and did it standing up. Merritt hears a man defending the woman who took his house money. So I've stopped trying. We talk about other things now. Sunday at 4, same as always. Where I am now, 18 months on. 1 bedroom in Yomtien, 12,000 a month. Retirement visa, the 800,000 baht sitting in Capricorn where it has to sit, which I'll tell you was an uncomfortable moment. Counting up what was left and realizing I still cleared the requirement, but not by nearly as much as I'd have told you 3 years ago. 90-day reporting at Yomtien Immigration, which I now do online like a civilized person. The spreadsheet is running again. Started it the second week I got out of that room. Rent, food, insurance, motorbike taxi, 20 baht. First entry after a gap of 2.5 years. And this is the part nobody understands, so I'll just say it and let people think what they think. I still send money to Royette, not to Wanpen. I have not seen her since that afternoon, and I don't intend to. To the clinic for her mother. 12,000 baht a month covers the insulin and the dressings and the chiropodist who comes out from town. And I pay it directly, and I go up twice a year, in June and in November, when I know she won't be there. May Somyai holds my hand and cries, and I check her other foot. Press the toenail, count. 2 seconds is fine. I cannot explain that to Marit, and I've given up trying to explain it to anybody else. The illness was never the lie. That's all I've got. Now, the title of this thing, and then I'll stop. 3 types of older foreign man that get fought over. Everyone assumes it's the rich one and the handsome one and, I don't know, the funny one. It isn't. The rich one is watched, not wanted. The handsome one at 54 doesn't exist. The third type is the one nobody talks about, and I was him, and I never saw it once in 3 years. The reliable one. The one who doesn't drink, doesn't shout, doesn't chase, pays on the same date every month, fixes the scooter, turns up at the hospital, and stays. In a place where every single thing anyone has can be taken away by somebody else's decision. That is not a boring man. That is infrastructure. And here is why I was so easy to keep. 7 years I looked after a woman who could not give me anything back. Not out of nobility. It's just what I did, and I got good at it, and by the end I didn't know how to be anything else. So when a woman appeared who needed more than she could return, I did not experience that as a warning. I experienced it as home. She didn't scam me. I want to be very careful with that word. She saw a big, quiet Swede who wanted to be necessary, and she was a woman with a son and a mother, and no passport and no exit. And she let me be necessary, and she took what came with it, and she never once pretended to be someone she wasn't. I did the pretending. I pretended I was careful. I wasn't found out. I was found. That's the whole of it. That was Gunnar Lindqvist, and he asked us to leave the numbers in, all of them. Here's what's worth sitting with. Gunnar didn't drink, he didn't gamble, he never bought a bar, he avoided every single thing the forums warn you about, and it cost him a third of everything he owned anyway, because the hazard he was carrying wasn't on anybody's checklist. It was in him before he ever landed. That's the pattern we see again and again on this channel. It isn't usually the reckless men who lose the most. It's the careful ones, the ones with a system, a spreadsheet, a list of red flags. Because a system protects you from the danger you can name, and almost never from the one you can't. So when you ask yourself which of the 3 types you are, ask a different question instead. Ask what you're actually here for, not the answer you'd give at a bar in Soibohao, the real one. Because whatever hole you brought with you from home, this country will find something to fill it with, and it will feel wonderful, and it will send you an invoice. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves out there. This is Thailand.